Hey, it's Derek with Distant Dot Candle Company. Just wanted to give everyone kind of an update. It's been 6 weeks since I officially launched, and this is New Year's Eve. So, finishing off the new year pretty strong. Did a lot better than I thought I would, which was a really good test just to see what my capabilities are. This whole thing started as a challenge to see if I could actually, start a business and see where it could go. It's given me a lot to take in as far as the process, how I'm preparing, as well as goals for next year. I want to give a big thanks to all the creators out there that I've been following the past couple years. Even before I even thought about doing this, um, like Memory Box Candle Company is a really big one. Black Tie Barn, um, Candle Business Pro has been awesome with Garzanet Beacon. Amber and Oak was another one that I started following within the past 6 months or so, but really appreciate all that those people do just to bring light to the candle industry itself, as far as the business side, but also as creators and humans, and how we all have our own unique approach to things, and how it all impacts us differently. So just want to give a big thanks to those, and thanks to everyone who's spent a dollar or a cent with my store. It I probably did 4 or 5 times what I expected to, and that just sets me up for bigger goals in 2026, which is kind of where my mind's been the past week or so. I want to be very deliberate with how I take next steps. So big thing for me is going to be maybe trimming down some of my offerings, taking a couple of the scents that haven't done, as well, mostly because they're, specific to a season or, a time of year. That's like tropical scents, things that, maybe aren't going to do super well in the winter. The thing that has taken off has been, wood scents. I've got one that's rosemary, sage, and pine, and that's been super popular. And ones that are more for home sense, where people just want to embrace the season as it is. So definitely going to keep those going. I mean, I'm proud of what I've made, and I think that's the most important part for any of us, is when we're putting ourselves out there and being vulnerable with something that expresses ourselves. That's the best thing you can get, is positive feedback from that, because that's where we're looking for, maybe not necessarily acknowledgement, but appreciation of what we've been able to create. So, very happy with what I've done, and the products themselves. I'm appreciative of other people's enjoyment of those, and that's been great so far. So, outside of that, it's really been the things that drive me crazy are packaging and presentation. I think a lot of that is just being, a consumer for so long. I expect things to go a certain way. So sometimes I don't have an exact vision for what I want, but I know that it's not what I'm doing. The labels are a big part of that. That's kind of been my crux, has been figuring out how exactly I want the labels. And so I did a revision on my 6 ounce candles. Did a label revision a couple weeks ago, and I liked how they turned out. And I've already got new ideas for how to even take it another step further, without reinventing the wheel, so to speak, but to at least be able to do something, closer to what I'm looking for. And that kind of leads me into what my next steps are going to be, which is going into wholesale. I do have some friends that do really well with wholesale, using Fair, and it's something I'm going to look into, just to see if it's something I can do. See if it's something that I can, deliver product wise, as well as if people like it enough. I know people love homemade goods or handmade goods, and luckily I do both of those, handmade at home. So just want to see what that exposure could be. Again, none of this, really is for, a new career. I already have enough going on with that. But it is nice to see how I can challenge myself to do something that I never thought I could, as much less like be able to deliver. There's a lot that comes into the planning, and the planning is the easy part, because the effort is what takes that planning to production. So super appreciative of that. Like, it's you learn a lot about yourself when you challenge yourself, and that's something that I've picked up on, not only, in therapy or anything like that, but just doing it. You figure out what you're made of when, your butt's on the line. Luckily, I don't have to invest a ton more of my own money into any of this. That's been like the one thing that you're always apprehensive of is how much am I willing to invest? And I took a big leap, and it hasn't paid for itself, but it's made a lot of traction to show that this is tangible. This is something I can do. This is something that I can continue to invest not only my time, but whatever I need to into it. The big thing for me that is the missing link, which is intentional, is I've been trying to figure out social media, not necessarily like what I need to do or how often I need to post, but see what that exposure turns into or how that materializes into sales. And that's this whole next month. January is going to be big for getting into the routines, being consistent. You could be consistent with your product, but you also have to be consistent with your exposure. And so, a big thing for me is going to be making sure that I've got, content and making it my own. Anyone can, replicate what someone else is doing, but I think it's really important to somehow make that your own. So I've got some interesting ideas of how I can, integrate who I am and, my life into, showcasing my business. So it's still weird to say business or whatever. But that's really what it is it's a business, and I have to make sure that I'm treating that the same way that I'm treating the products that I make. The way the business appears has to be the same, as has to be consistent to how I treat it and how everyone sees it. So I don't know if I'm going to do any markets yet. I haven't delved into that at all, but social media is going to be big, and having that social media foundation is going to be big going into wholesale as well. Because if someone buys my product in a store, I want them to see how everyone else in the world that hasn't seen it yet touches it, or how people from other parts of the world or the country, how they see it. So I'm interested to see all of that. I know it's going to be a challenge getting through the end of the year with product releases and software releases at work, as well as going into some certifications I'm working on with school, and family stuff. Like Christmas is a big deal in my family. I've got 8 aunts and uncles who all have children, and 67,000 cousins, whatever it is. I don't remember the count anymore, but it's been nice to not have two full-time jobs and a school career that I have to put aside for them. But going into next year, it's going to be putting those next steps in my own path towards wherever this may go. I don't know what that'll be. I'm interested to find out. You can't fail if you're trying. So that's kind of how I've looked at this whole thing. It's just you know the struggle of, is it good enough? And then once you find out that it is good enough, is creating those next steps. So big things are just labels, consistency, figuring out packaging. That's been another one that I've tried not to take on too quickly. At first it was just some white boxes with packaging tape, and then getting the gum paper tape on those, and then figuring out what sizes I need on what my average boxes orders are going to be. And if that's 3 candles, I have one box that'll fit it, and figuring out those measurements and leaving room for packaging. So that may be something I do another video on here soon. But those are the luxury things now. Like, I feel like I have a luxury of fine tuning things. If I get traction with social media, all it's going to do is give me more opportunities to find some concrete methods and practices, and finalizing some of the things about my product that I didn't know that I wanted. That's just it's been such a great journey. I can't say it enough. It's not just the personal growth, but you start seeing a different side to small businesses, and you start understanding markets different, as far as industries, not necessarily physical markets, but it's different. You start to see where you can put all the effort in and get nothing out of it, and you can put no effort and get all of it out of it. So there's a fine balance in there that I'm trying to find, and I'll probably always be searching for it. But I think the next steps kind of dictate how that's going to go. And hopefully I'll be able to be in some stores. It's been interesting having random people reach out asking what my production time would be for wholesale just from finding me on the internet. So I think that goes back to a lot of the search engine optimization and things like that that businesses really need to utilize if you want to start reaching people in random Google searches. So it's something I don't know a ton about, but it's on my radar for something to continue to work on. So maybe I'll add that to the goal list is SEO stuff and figuring out that side of marketing. But thanks for listening to me rant. It's kind of just a quick video journal of where I'm at and what the next steps are going to be once the year turns over tomorrow. And make sure you hit like and subscribe. Thanks again. Happy New Year.